Hey, welcome to Egghead Anarchy. I'm Alex.
And I'm Brian.
And we have a special episode for you today.
We were originally going to have a certain topic, which you'll find out at the end of this, what that was going to be. But we ended up getting kind of distracted and talking about having a really good in-depth debate on copyright and Let's Plays. So we decided, instead of doing the original topic that we were planning on, to publish an episode about copyright and Let's Plays. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. We hope you guys enjoy it. By the way, we are very, very, very close to having eggheadanarchy.com go live. So we have a version of the site up now. So if you want to, you can go check it out. But it's not the full production whiz-bang thing. We will have that up hopefully by next episode. So we'll hopefully have some good news there. We are, however, on Stitcher now. So if you want to listen to the podcast, you can. There's lots of ways to do it. You can do it via SoundCloud, via YouTube, via iTunes, or via Stitcher. If you want to communicate with us, you can tweet at us at Egghead Anarchy on Twitter, or you can tweet me at BSG Bryan on Twitter.
Or me at Senior Don Gatto on Twitter.
That's right. We also have a Facebook page, facebook.com/eggheadanarchy. And soon to be coming, eggheadanarchy.com, that will have a streaming audio player so you can listen to the podcast there as well. So without further ado, let's get into the copyright and Let's Play debate.
Yeah, hope you enjoyed this behind-the-scenes look at what we do when we're not recording the podcast.
Yes. Mm-hmm. There was this conversation that Wes and Carol were having about Let's Plays, and how they relate to, how they may potentially relate to game sales.
Yeah,
because specifically that Dragon Cancer people are saying that they're really upset about Let's Plays because they think that they've lost sales over it.
Who?
But there are other. What's that?
Who's saying that?
The developers of That Dragon Cancer.
Oh,
I forget their names, but there are other developers saying the same thing. Basically, people who developers who have very linear, very story heavy stuff. Like Firewatch would be another good example of this. That they're saying Let's Plays are we're losing money, we're losing sales because people will just watch the Let's Play instead of playing the game.
Because my game is closer to a video than it is to something else,
well,
and that's how I kind of feel about it. That the experience isn't significantly different between different players.
Between different plays. Disagree with that. I completely disagree with that. No,
I think that's where the criticism comes from. Is the idea? Oh,
true. Yes, yes. That's but I just don't think it's valid. So, and the reason I don't think it's valid is because games are fundamentally different. Mm-hmm. They're a fundamentally different medium than movies. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing as saying that movies and TV shows are basically the same thing.
Well, I don't. No. I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm saying I think that's what the developers feel, is that their game isn't different enough between plays for you to still have value to play it if you've watched a playthrough of it.
Right. Okay. So that's not what they're saying.
What are they saying?
And I think that's a confusion that a lot of people have. That's not what they're saying. What they're saying is that people think that based on watching the Let's Play. They're like, oh, this is the only experience I could have. I've already had it, so I'm not going to play the game. When in reality, that's not true. So, for example, a game like Firewatch, which I bought, Sony had it on sale, so I bought it, and then I played through it. And yeah, it's very linear. There's not, it's just, linear walking simulator, right? But it's, how to put it, I've seen Let's Plays of it, not the whole thing, but I've seen, a few minutes here and there, but it's just different because the stuff is happening to me. You know what I mean? I'm not some passive observer, right? And so it's just a very different experience than watching the video. And I think that's what developers are saying. I think developers are saying, they're saying that they're losing sales, but they're losing sales because of this perception that the game is basically just a movie. And they're saying, no, it's not. Because it's a game and because it's a different medium, when you're playing it, your experience is different because you're playing it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Well, I definitely think those kind of games are are different than a game than other kinds of games. I definitely think there are different types of games that are pretty wildly different. And that those are that there's kind of a spectrum for media of interactivity that ranges from kind of on the left is like play, and on the right is like a film. And games are between those two, but then there are different types of games that are in different places on that spectrum. So some games are more towards the edge of like film, and some games are more towards play. So like those kind of linear story games that don't have a lot of gameplay mechanic are much closer to film than something like Dungeons and Dragons is, which is much closer to play than that is. You know what I'm saying? Because Dungeons and Dragons, like, it has rules, but even the rules are like, you don't always have to follow the rules, which makes it kind of weird as a game because you can just disregard large sections of the rules. And also a lot of the rules are like stuff like how you interact with the other players and how you guys talk and just like the way that your imaginations interact, which is much closer to something like just an imaginary playing session between kids. And then something, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think there's definitely a spectrum, and that some of those games are more over on that side.
1 second, sorry. Yasmin, can you put your headphones on, please? Yeah. Thank you. I have a big problem with saying that a game which is strictly linear is a film. Because it's not.
What about have you seen the 360 degree films?
Yes.
I mean, those are a lot like maybe a walking simulator. Like they kind of have a similar.
But they're not because a walking simulator is much closer to that than something like a Skyrim, but you can still go wherever you want in a walking simulator. You can take whatever amount of time that you want to do things. You know,
not necessarily.
Yeah,
you could have a walking simulator where events always play out, like a game like Night Trap, for instance, where events always play out. The game only lasts whatever it is, like 2 hours every time you play it, because the events happen in real time in those 2 hours, and just where you are in the game is dependent on where you've walked.
Well, except that Night Trap,
Night Trap has other mechanics in it, but that's the kind of thing.
I was going to say, Night Trap is a full-on game. It has lose conditions and all that kind of stuff.
You could make a game like Night Trap where your only interaction with it is just walking around and looking at the story. And that would be pretty similar to like a 360-degree camera setup.
Well, true, but that's also because of the limitations of the technology at the time. Like, you weren't immersed in the world. It literally was a bunch of movies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But you could still do that now. I'm saying that it's more spectrum than it is like clear, hard defined line between any of these things.
Oh, yes, very true. I just don't think that
and there is probably a game.
You would have to have a game, quote unquote, that was literally nothing but a bunch of video sequences that you transitioned between for it to be close to a film. To me, that's the end of the spectrum.
Films are very far on the spectrum. I think books do rate higher in interactivity than films do. You have to keep turning pages for a book to keep going. A film doesn't care. You can walk out of the room. A film continues. It requires zero input from you to exist and to continue. Something like a book requires more interactivity. Something like a 360-degree video has even more interactivity, and then you know what I'm saying, it kind of goes across. And I think you keep going, but it does make it kind of hard, because there are some games where maybe, I think my point is that some games have less value, not that they have no value, but they do have less value than others for you playing it personally versus watching a let's play of it.
Okay, yes, and I yes, and that's why you don't see let's watches of movies because of copyright.
You do see let's watches of movies,
not movies that are currently copyrighted. That's where Content ID comes from.
No, I mean, you do, but they give you an audio track and then say you have to have the video. I mean,
well,
that's
because,
the kind of thing that
because
Mystery
there's
Science,
copyright, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
See, the problem is that Let's Plays are a clear violation of copyright. However, they're a clear violation of copyright that doesn't exist yet because the industry is so new.
I don't think they're all a clear violation of copyright. You have to decide. I think it's kind of on a case by case because you have to decide A, if it's fair use, and B, well, first of all,
the Let's Players make money off of them. They are
doesn't
literally profiting off of the work of other people without in any way compensating those other people.
That has nothing to do with whether or not your copyright is fair use, whether you make money off of it.
Yes, it does.
No, I am 100% certain on this. You can look it up. That's just a common myth about fair use. You can make money off of stuff that's fair use. That's why Broadway plays like that make fun of other Broadway plays can't exist. They don't have to pay the people who originally did it.
Because no. Because it's not the exclusive content. Like that's why. So things like reviews that show scenes from a preview of a film, right? That's what you're talking about. Like podcasts like the Jimquisition, right? He uses video from games and he makes money off of his podcast, and that's fair use, right? The reason is because he's not using the actual content. He's not actually playing the game or playing the entirety of the film without speaking over it and making money off of that. That would be a violation of copyright.
The reason that would
and that's the thing is that he's adding something of value to a portion of the original content. He's not taking the content wholesale and reselling it.
But what I'm saying is that's actually another thing, which is whether or not the work is transformative. But even transformative works are not automatically fair use. There's other criteria that you have to meet in addition to being transformative to be fair use. So you can be transformative and not be fair use. And in fact, the only thing that being transformative does is grant you a right to your own copyright on that thing. But even then, the fact that you have your own copyright does not entitle you to the use of the original thing. And this comes from the idea that whether or not you are just re-releasing the same thing as someone else. So
yes.
Yeah, and you cannot do that. You must transform it.
That's what Let's Plays do.
That's not what most Let's Plays are transformative. Whether or not
no, they're not. They're literally someone talking over the game. They're playing the game and they're talking, and that's
transformative.
That's not transformative.
Yeah, it makes the meaning of the thing different. The meaning of a game.
No, that's why Mystery Science Theater and Riff Tracks work the way that they do. That's why that's why Mystery Science Theater only ever did films that were out of copyright, that no longer had copyright on them. Is because they were not they were violating. If Mystery Science Theater tried to do something on Age of Ultron, it would be a violation of copyright, plain and simple, because they would be showing the movie in its entirety.
I'm not saying that they have fair use to it. I'm saying that it's transformative. Those are two different things.
Well, then in that case, I could just put a graphic of a monkey over top of a video and say this is transformative. No,
because it has to transform it in a meaningful way.
And see, that putting a picture of a monkey, I could argue and make a really good case that's transforming it in a meaningful way.
Yeah, but say, for instance, well, it could, depending on what it is. Like if you took a speech with Donald Trump and you replaced Donald Trump in the speech, and this was something owned by Donald Trump, like a video that he had released, and you replaced him with a Photoshop monkey throughout the whole thing, and that was the only thing, you could say this is transformative because it's transforming the message. Donald Trump released this, and his message was that he's really clever and great. And I have, by switching him with a monkey, I am now giving the audience the information that he is an idiot. And furthermore, this is parody. So it is A, transformative because I've changed the message, and B, it's parody. So that way it's fair use. So yes, I can upload this and receive money off of it without any work from him.
I guarantee that would not work for money. I guarantee that would not work for somebody making money off of it. That's the reason that things like memes work, but people don't make money off of memes.
It doesn't like matter. This is how the law is written. If you go and look at the stuff, if it's transformative and it's parody, you can make money off of it, and it doesn't matter about the original creator. They can sue you and claim that either it is not transformative or it's not parody, but that is an issue for a court to decide if that point comes up, and they'll decide whether or not the meaning is transformed and whether or not it is parody. But if it does transform and it is parody, it is fair use. Same thing, if it transforms and it's educational, it's fair use. If it transforms and et cetera, there's a number of things that make it fair use, which are like parody, education, and criticism, I think, are maybe the three things. So if it does those things and is transformative, you can use it. You do not have to do the original creator anything. Now, they can object and claim that it is not those things, and then you go to court and you argue about it. But I mean, that is how that works. So like a Let's Play where they just sit around and make fun of the game is parody, and it does use an amount of the game, but also arguments about how much of the original content it uses are normally arguments about how much it hurts their right to it, which is not a strict condition. It may come up and it may be important in the specific case. It might be important for how much damages they get, but not necessarily. People have used the whole of things and gotten away with it, and people have been sued for using like a single note from another song and lost and been forced to pay for it. Do we have like a 30-minute section on copyright now?
Yeah. Well, so I'm trying to think because
but again, this is because this is such a new case, and because like I would not bet on currently a court finding that your work is transformative or parody. For one thing, and this has been an issue with fan fiction, which is that sometimes it requires a deep knowledge of the subject matter to understand the ways in which a work is transformative. And especially in new media like video games, it can be hard when your judge is 85 to find a judge who understands how this works and how these things are transformative. But again, that's more a question of like actual legal proceedings and arguments rather than it is a question of what like the intent and text of the law is. I mean, that's how go ahead. Sorry.
Well, as you said, how I guess what I want to see is how is that different?
What do you mean?
The way the law is written and the intent, or like the two things that you compared, like I don't see how those are different.
What do you mean? The intent of the law and your ability to litigate? I mean, those are wildly different.
They're almost the exact same thing. Like so your ability to litigate is going to be directly dependent on your knowledge of the law and the way that it's written.
And also how much money I have to hire a lawyer and like things like that.
Well, but that's what I'm saying is that'll be the quality of your lawyer is like how well they understand the subject matter. And then there's also other stuff like how well they know the judge and blah, blah, whatever. But
I'm saying that's the stuff that is more in the way that is different. That stuff like how good your lawyer is, how good of a lawyer you can afford versus how good of a lawyer Disney can afford if Disney decides to sue you. But that doesn't really have anything like that's not about the intent of the law. That's just problems with current law. Like it's like Jim Sterling. That's like saying that because Jim Sterling gets content ID'd on stuff that he has fair use on, he should get content ID'd on that stuff. Do you kind of get what I'm saying? Like,
no.
Okay. Well, because the intent of the law is not always the way that the law actually works out. Like if you have law written that is supposed to protect people, and then just, politicians who don't want it to work that way, or, a system that's biased against certain people, it doesn't work that way. The intent of the law is that it should work a certain way, but it doesn't in practice. Like, that's just injustice. That just happens. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess what I'm failing to see is how any of this lessens the case that or supports the case that Let's Plays are fair use.
Mm-hmm. Well, for instance, Jim Sterling does Let's Plays that are the Steam,
the green light.
Yeah, the like green light Let's Plays. Mm-hmm. Those are fair use because they are specifically criticism. He looks at the game, he criticizes it, he gives a critical opinion on it, and the material that he has in the video is specifically for that purpose. And it is transformed into simply being from, like, it's not just video of the game. The whole of the package is transformed of just from the experience of someone playing, or the experience of the game, to a critical review of that game. Those are two separate things. The work is transformative, and it is for the purpose of criticism. So therefore it is fair use.
Yeah. And that's fine, but that's not the game. He's playing what's uploaded to he's doing exactly what Steam Greenlight is intended for. He's telling people, hey, here's this game that someone wants to release. Is it good or not? That's exactly what Steam Greenlight is for. That's very, very different from a Let's Player getting That Dragon Cancer, playing through the entire game, not saying, like, not critiquing it, just playing through the game, and that's it.
Well, what I said is that it's dependent on which Let's Play. Whether or not a specific Let's Play is transformative is depends. But whether or not they talk or whether or not it's criticism, like, it doesn't have to be criticism. It can also be parody, or it can also be educational. So if I Let's Play a game and look at specifically and talk about the ways that it's constructed from a standpoint of educating someone about game design, that would definitely be fair play.
Well, and that's like what the extra credit teams do.
Yeah.
Right.
And if I Let's Play a game,
what's very important is that they don't do that with games that are brand new, typically, that are like out right now. And they don't do the whole game. Right. And again, they're talking about things very specifically. They're not just playing through the game.
Yeah. Well, neither the length nor the newness of it are criteria for whether or not it's transformative or Let's Play. They might.
I understand that, but it changes. I mean, it's like, that's an important factor. When you have a game that's brand new that came out like a week ago, and you show the entirety of the game, and literally the only thing you're adding to it is your reaction as the game is happening, and your reaction isn't even prominent because your audio is ducked under the game's audio, and then your video is just a small. If your video is even there, your video is just a small thing in the corner, right? Like a small picture-in-picture. Then you're just showing people the game.
That's an argument specifically about whether or not the work is transformative.
And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, like, this is part of the whole problem with all of this, is that this isn't black and white.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. This is becoming an issue now because Let's Plays are big enough. And you have people like PewDiePie and Total Biscuit and all these people that are making shit piles of money off of these Let's Plays, but the developers are not. They're getting nothing from this. And there's a reason that you don't see this type of behavior with movies and TV shows or even books, right? You don't have people, and I mean, this may happen, but I haven't heard of this happening because I'm not as up on books. But to my knowledge, you don't have people reading books and providing commentary, light commentary here and there, and charging people money for it. That's just not how it works.
I think the reason that this is the case has to do with what we started talking about, which is that each person's individual experience of a game is different. And it means that there is an argument that the act of playing a game is transformative because games are so individual to the player and each experience is different that when you play it, you are taking at least some transformative action on it. That does not make it fair use, but it does mean that your action is transformative. And again, but like a video that, for instance, you played through a game that was really buggy and you just showed all the bugs like silently, like that's still like whether or not you talk doesn't even necessarily come into it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like your actions in a
there
game
would be a specific point. It wouldn't be just playing through the game, showing the game. And that's the thing is that like my argument isn't, and I know I've been using a lot of specific examples, but it's to try to like bolster my core point, which is Let's Plays are violating copyright, but people don't think that they are because of all the things that we're talking about. Right. Well, and fundamentally, people don't think that they are because I think a lot of people misunderstand
things that are fair use aren't violating copyright.
No, true.
So
yes,
the statement
what I'm saying is
are violating copyright is, do you mean all Let's Plays are violating copyright?
So when I think of a Let's Play, I have a very specific scenario in mind.
Well, that is, you're using a definition of Let's Play then that is not like a common definition of Let's Play, I think.
I would totally disagree with that. All the Let's Plays that I've seen Aiden and Yasmin like watch, there are a couple different kinds. There are kinds like what PewDiePie does, where he'll play like 4.5 hours of Dark Souls and he'll edit it down to the funny bits, right? Or he'll play Gone Home or something like that. But he adds a lot of stuff to it. He stops, he talks to the camera. He's like, wow, what about this? Blah, 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 blah. That's really crazy. But, he adds a lot to what he's doing. And he'll skip over stuff. He'll go back and do stuff again. It's not a simple playthrough of the game, right? So that's entertainment, right? That's what you're talking about, I think, where he's adding a lot to it.
That makes it transformative, but it doesn't make it fair use, which transformative works can still be in violation of copyright.
Well, no, right. But so what I'm saying is beyond just being transformative, it's educational. It's sometimes it's parody. Like a lot of his stuff, especially when he plays horror games, it's parody, right? Like he's doing it specifically to be funny. He's trying to scare himself so that he screams and does whatever he does. But it falls into one of those categories that you mentioned earlier, right? Education, parody, or criticism. And he critiques the games a lot of times when he's playing them too. And what I've seen is when he's done, like when he finishes a game, he'll invite conversation. He'll say, this is what I think of it. This was my experience. You guys should check this out and let me know what you think about it. That's very different from what I've seen from other Let's Players. And of course I can't think of the names right now, who they'll play through a game and like it's 90% of the time it's a video of them sitting there saying nothing, playing through the game. And then when it's done, they're like, oh, okay, well that kind of sucked. And then they move on to the next thing. That's it.
I don't watch any Let's Plays like that.
Well, that's the thing is like these people, they make like a lot of money and they have like a ton of followers and they do these things. They're taking money away from these developers. And it's not necessarily, I'm not saying that it's just their fault. Right?
Maybe. I think there's a that's not a really solid argument that they're taking money away from those developers. It's like saying that piracy takes money away from, like, every pirate is a loss of a sale. Like that's not a good equivocation. Like it's just kind of,
well, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that every person who watches the Let's Play doesn't buy the game. I'm saying that a Let's Player that plays the entirety of a game without adding much over top, without really doing anything on their own, like takes money away from developers because fewer people are going to buy the games.
Why are fewer people? Maybe more people buy the game because they watch it and they want to play it now. So they go out and purchase it. Like that's
a multiplayer game. Yes. And like game companies have come out and said this, and they've said, this is why This is one of the reasons that, especially for AAA games, more and more AAA games are having multiplayer added, is specifically because of things like Let's Plays. Because
I mean, that's what the recording companies were saying about piracy, and it didn't necessarily hold up. Like they're not.
It didn't necessarily not hold up though. I mean, and see, this is
people
the thing.
who pirate are much more likely to have larger real collections and to spend more money on the stuff that they pirate than people who don't pirate.
Not true.
Yeah, there have been studies on this that I've found online about this, that people who pirate tend to also buy stuff.
Yes, but not that they have larger collections than anyone else. And this is another reason this is really tough to discuss, is because things are changing very quickly, especially in the realm of music, because people are buying less and less music all the time, and they're using things like Spotify.
Yeah.
And that's like Spotify, specifically services like Spotify and things like iTunes, have contributed massively to a reduction in piracy. And the two reasons for that are that it's really easy to get access to the content, and the content is reasonably priced. That's it. It's that simple.
See, I think this is interesting. I don't see that necessarily equates that, because I personally have bought a lot of games because I've watched a Let's Play of it. And that's how I've purchased it. And a lot of games that I'm thinking about purchasing, I make that decision on based on Let's Plays.
True. However, you're not the typical game consumer. You are far more like, well, your view, like you and I view games differently than gamers who are not developers, right? Just like an author views a book just intrinsically differently than someone who's not an author. Does that make sense?
There's a lot of speculation on the way that game or that Let's Plays affect games. But I don't think there's any real data on that. Like actual data.
Yes, I absolutely agree, and that's part of the problem. And
you can make speculation either way, that it is either helpful or not helpful. And I do think that some games are probably helped by it, and some games are not. And that's
what I was saying about multiplayer. So
I don't think it's multiplayer necessarily, but there are games like things like Firewatch, I think, are much more hurt by Let's Plays than something like Dark Souls is. Even if you're playing Dark Souls single player, like it doesn't matter. Like that's a game where the gameplay is the thing. You personally playing it is the thing.
True, but single player, any type of single player story driven game is more likely to be hurt by a Let's Play video than a multiplayer experience. And the reason is because,
again, like on a spectrum.
Oh, true. Yes,
I think this exists.
I'm not saying it's binary, but even something like Dark Souls. I mean, so like, because for a single player story driven experience, the story is one of the main attractions.
I mean, Dark Souls is not story driven. So,
well, Dark Souls is also a very like weird case. You know what I mean? Something like Uncharted, for example. If someone was to do a Let's Play of Uncharted, and they did just the game start to finish, and they didn't, and it wasn't something like a PewDiePie where they add a lot of things to it, right?
That's what I've been watching.
Even if they did, like what's that?
I've been watching something like that.
Oh yeah. You said that, which is cool, I think. But
I would not purchase that game, not because I didn't watch it, but because it just doesn't look like a game that I want that much.
Yeah. Which is fine. And see, this is the thing.
But
fundamentally, I think that Let's Plays should be viewed as marketing tools.
I think sometimes they are, but sometimes, and I think this is kind of the issue. There are Let's Plays that are transformative that are not fair use. There are Let's Plays that are neither transformative nor fair use. And there are ones that are both transformative and fair use. And ones that are not transformative and not fair use are probably going to go away eventually. Like those do not really have a place to be. And
how would they go away? That's my question.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, they might not go away entirely, but that is going to be the kind of thing that smarter, better, like copyright work.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Not the current copyright ID system, but like a smarter, better system.
Yeah.
Would hit things like that probably.
Yes.
And you know what? Really small ones that have like 200 viewers or something are probably not going to get hit because they're too small to matter. And they're too small to police. Like it just doesn't really matter at all. And things that are transformative but not fair use, I think, are something that are the most problematic, because ones that are transformative and fair use have right to do it no matter what companies want to say about it. They have the right to do it. They're going to do it. Things that are
the problem is that in that case, it's the small developers that get hurt.
It is this. Well, so I mean,
but that's the thing. I mean, you can say so, but when you're a developer like the people who made That Dragon Cancer, and let's say for sake of argument, all of the Let's Plays for That Dragon Cancer, all of them were transformative, and they didn't violate copyright. They did everything they were supposed to. They were all critiques, or they were parodies, or they were educational in some way, right? And they did everything to meet the thing. However, people still didn't buy the game simply because they saw the Let's Play. And like, oh, well, this is all the game has to offer? Okay, I'm not going to buy the game now. And not everyone, but like a meaningful number of people did that. And the developer lost out. You could say, well, tough, but you know who wouldn't be in that situation? EA. Any game produced by EA.
Yeah.
Because EA would have the muscle to go to all of those Let's Plays and say, we need a portion of the money that you make from this game, period. And here's why. And the Let's Players, because you know what? Anybody but somebody like PewDiePie wouldn't even have the money to like have a legal team to go against EA.
Well,
and even if they did, why would they want to? It'd be so much easier to say, okay, you know what? 5% of everything I make from this video, 10%, whatever it is, will go to you guys because that's fair, because it's your game, whatever it is.
Yeah.
However,
and this is, I don't think that's, I think that's a wildly not super likely scenario, especially things that are fair use and are not. For one thing, YouTube networks are a big deal now, which means that they not most, but above a certain like viewership, they do have legal representation, because essentially you enter into a partnership with a bunch of other YouTube channels and you have a production company who represents you legally. And those are the kind of things like that they're protected because of that. It's really only big developers can step on really, really small Let's Plays. And people who are unaffiliated with a network. But again, the people who are unaffiliated are very small. So it's really,
but still, that means that the small developers are the ones that get screwed. And that's what I'm talking about. Because
it's
what'll
the
end up
small
happening,
developers and the small YouTube creators. It's the small ones on both sides that get screwed. It's a system in which the legal system screws people because your relative amount of money is hugely important on how well the legal system works for you in the United States. And that's kind of a separate issue to like whether or not people should Let's Play things.
Well, yeah, and that's
but here's kind of
but that's not what's at issue here. What's at issue here is developers losing money via Let's Plays. Is that happening or is it not? And what I'm saying is that I think that it is, and when that happens, small developers, even like in the scenario that you're talking about, the way everything is set up right now, big developers, if nothing were to change, and big developers were to get sick of it and they were to be like, listen, you need to, like, if you're going to do a Let's Play of our game, you need to give us a portion of the money that you make from that video.
Yeah.
And the Let's Players is like, okay, that's fine. You know, like, yeah, I'll give you 10%, 15%, whatever. Like, I'm going to lose a little bit of money, but you're not going to sue me. And maybe we can even enter into some kind of a thing where like we both benefit from this. You know what I mean? Because to be honest, like Let's Plays are marketing tools. Period.
Or not. I mean, critical things that exist for the purpose of criticism.
But that's still a marketing tool.
And parody. It's
all press is good press. Like, just like, you know, Plan 9 from Outer Space is widely regarded to be the worst movie of all time. Yeah. And I've known a lot of people that have watched it specifically because it's widely regarded to be the worst film of all time. I'm one of those people. And it was hilarious. It's so terrible and it's so awful. But I watched the movie because it was reviewed as being so bad.
There are a lot of developers who say that their game was ruined because it got bad reviews. Same with people who make films, even people who make really big films, saying that their film was ruined because it got bad reviews. But if your thing was ruined because it got bad reviews because people didn't like it, so what? that sucks for you. I'm sorry, but that's how it should work. If people don't like your thing, they should be allowed to tell other people that they don't like it. Like
yeah, I'm not saying otherwise.
Well, you kind of are, though, because what else? These types of speech that are protected as fair use are protected for a reason.
What I'm saying is I don't see Let's Players doing that. That's what I'm saying.
I think the issue is that there are a lot of Let's Plays that are transformative but are not fair use. And I think that's where the issue is. And I think those need to be covered in a similar way to the way that covering songs is handled. It is considered a right for people to be able to cover the work of another artist, but there is also, you have to pay for it. But those rates that you pay for it are controlled. So they cannot charge you a ridiculous amount of money to just stop you from doing it. And I think that's kind of maybe where Let's Plays should go. For ones that are transformative, is to say, hey, you can play our game, but if your game is not for the purpose of parody, education, or criticism, you have to pay us. And there is kind of like a set fee to play this game.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
I think that is completely appropriate. I do not think it is appropriate to say that people who are under fair use need to change because it might hurt developers.
And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that specifically for Let's Plays, maybe I've been doing a bad job of trying to say what I'm saying. Specifically for Let's Plays, I don't think that there's a good enough framework to define what education, parody, or critique mean at this point. Because that's fair. In theory, you could say that somebody, playing a game saying absolutely nothing through the whole play, and then at the end saying, okay, that was good. You could say that's critique.
It's probably not. That it's similar to I would say, if I was looking at this from a legal perspective, because a lot of the ways that specific kind of thing is defined is through case law.
Right. Yeah.
And there's not a lot of that yet, but I would be looking at things like documentaries if I was looking at that. So in a documentary, you can't show something and then not talk about that specific thing. So like if you showed the whole game and then just kind of went, yep, nope, it's good. Like the stuff that you showed was not directly related to that comment. Like you have to have some sort of relational, like you're not transforming all of it. It's just a comment attached to some video. It's not, they don't really work together. You need to show parts that have something that you're talking about specifically.
Yeah, like maybe so a good example of that working would be, or like a good limit. I don't know. Yeah, like that working would be, instead of the one comment at the end, like as you're playing through the game, this is a really good use of lighting over here. Yeah, like what extra credits do. You know what I mean? Exactly. Like making comments and like qualitative statements about things. Yeah. And again, that's I don't see this as being I don't see this as being quick. There's like you said before, there just isn't any data about this, and we need data. Like we need some way to determine, okay, what if any financial damage is actually being done by Let's Plays. Because people like me can say, like you said, I can speculate all day long and I have no problem doing that. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really mean anything. We need data to say, okay, for this game, for that Dragon Cancer, these Let's Plays eliminated 30% of possible sales.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. That's a significant number. Right. And if that was to come out, I imagine most Let's Players would even say, wow, we didn't want to do that. That is not we didn't want to hurt the developer. Right. We didn't want to take sales away from them. So, okay, let's figure some way to work this out. And then, like the conversation can move forward. I
think those transformative, but not, not fair use ones. I really like those. And I think they're kind of important. There's a lot to be done there. And I do think they need some protection, but I don't think that they should be free to make money. And I think it should very much be like the music industry. Like you can cover this, but you have to pay a fee. But also they need some protection because Nintendo has that set up now. You can enter into a partnership program with Nintendo and let's play their
so
games.
terrible.
But it's really bad. You can you're not allowed to play games that aren't Nintendo games on your channel, and you have to pay like 70% of your income to them.
Yeah.
And that is not okay. Like that's ridiculous. There needs to be some control over that. Like if they say, so we're going to take 20% of your gross and you have a right to do it and we can't stop you, but also 20% of the gross and et cetera, like that, that makes more sense.
Yeah. Like,
and the exact details of that to be worked out, but
So really quick, you mentioned let's plays that are transformative but not fair use. You like them?
Oh yeah.
Like, I guess what would be an example and why?
Okay. So I would say, something like, and see, this is interesting because I think there's a lot of Let's Plays that are that you could edit to fair use, but that but that kind of there's bits that are, but there's a lot of it where they're just talking to each other or doing whatever, and that's the kind of thing like Game Grumps or like what's the one Yahtzee Crowshaw's Let's Drown Out, where the reason that I'm watching those games be Let's Played is not because I care about that game. It has nothing to do with that game. The reason I'm there is to listen to the conversation and the talk by those people. Like the content they're creating is what I'm there for. I'm not really there for the game. And those are the kind of things that I like. and I think they're good because of the content that is added on top of the game, which is why I kind of feel like, what?
Oh, but you're saying it's just maybe commentary, so it doesn't fall into what would currently be considered a fair use category?
Yeah, it's commentary, and it might not even directly be commentary about the game at all times. It might be them just talking about their day, which their stuff that they're adding to it, they absolutely have a right to. And it is transformative, but it's not fair use because it's not to educate you about anything. It's not to educate you about the game. It might educate you about something else, but not about that game. And it's not direct parody of that game. It's just them talking about stuff.
Yeah. And see, that's interesting because they couldn't do that with any other sort of media either. Like that specifically, they wouldn't be able to do that with like a movie.
You couldn't do it about a movie while including the movie, but also kind of interestingly, and this is why I don't think that's a fantastic analogy, because a lot of times it is dependent on the way that they are playing the game, like how they're talking about it. And that means that their specific play of the game is unique enough that their like creation on top of it is dependent on that. So their work within the game of playing the game like is part of the way that the work is transformative.
Well, and that's
why I'm saying that it needs protection, but not that it is fair use.
Yes. Yeah.
It is a unique situation that is unique to games because games are unique from other media and it needs a little bit of unique protection on top of the way the law is built.
Yeah. So it sounds like maybe with what you were talking about earlier, that would be a cover. Like with a music analogy, that would be a cover.
And I feel like
that'd be fine. They would just need to pay the people who made the game originally to say, hey, you know what? This was kind of the fuel that drove our media.
Exactly.
So we should give you something for that. And that's exactly what I'm talking about.
I think that is the way. But I wouldn't want people, because I think people tend to lump these wildly together, like people who are fair use and people who are not fair use. And again, I think there are some that are fair use some of the time, but maybe not all the time. And those get even weirder to deal with. But I would say that if you're fair use some of the time, but not all the time, you probably should be under the cover section, or you need to be like editing more, maybe.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I think, I think right now it's just Wild West because so much of this stuff is undefined. I think once this stuff becomes better defined, then you're going to have Let's Players making some hard choices. You know, do I want my channel to, or do I want to do one Let's Play where it is fair use one where it isn't that I'm willing to pay. And that's definitely where things potentially become marketing. Well, I think the whole thing is marketing material, just like reviews are. But like the protected Let's Plays, we'll say, the covers, right? Those are kind of seen more as potential, like marketing material by the developers, right? Because it's like, I mean, well, I guess so. A question: would you be like, would watching a Let's Play from like Yahtzee, for example, have any impact or influence at all on you purchasing whatever game they're playing?
Oh, for sure. It absolutely would.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. That's marketing material for the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But it might affect me negatively. I might be like, oh, that game looks like it's terrible and I don't want to play it. Or it might be something where like Uncharted, I'm going to bring up again, but I'm like, I look at it and I'm like, that game looks okay, but also I'm not super into third person like cover-based shooters. So I probably won't buy that because that's mostly what this is.
Yeah. And I think that's another way that this is really sticky is because if I'm a developer and, no, maybe not. Just thinking about it, like, because my thought is, if I was a developer and for some reason, and I'm paying a Let's Player, but that's not how it would work. They'd be paying me, right? So if it's one of these protected things, and I see it as a marketing tool, just because people are aware of my game, right? Like for example, I'm Naughty Dog, right? And you watch the Let's Play. Well, you may not buy the game, but I mean, I'm going to make like 75 cents per 1,000 views or whatever it is. So I'm not making a bunch of money off of you, but at least I'm getting something. Yeah. You know what I mean? Instead of you watching the video, realizing you're not going to buy the game, and I just get zero for it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's if I make a decision based on having more information about the game, whether or not I want to buy the game, like it would be kind of shady for a company to say, I'm going to limit the amount of information available about my games. That way people have to purchase it without knowing very much about it.
Oh, no. Absolutely. But that's not what I'm talking about. Because fair use, there would be a critique.
Yeah.
There would be education. Yeah. There would be something else. But for the non-fair use cases, where people are just talking over these games and they're not even, like you're saying, they're not even specifically talking about the game.
And it would make you feel better as a developer to know that you got money. And maybe even you're getting money from people who were not going to buy it, are not going to buy it, will not ever buy it, never even thought about buying it, are just there because they like watching this show. Like you're getting some money from them too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the show, and it's really not because somebody's viewing it that you're getting the money. You're getting the money because somebody else is using it as a basis to create their own creative work.
Exactly.
Like, it's the fact that they're using it as the basis for something that they're doing. That's why you're getting the money. Not so much because because other people are looking at it. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And that's why I equate it so like with covers, because I think covers kind of make a lot of sense on this. You're taking somebody else's creative work and just saying, this is the basis for my creative work, and I'm going to do more or less something like it. And I'm not going to be
that's
parodying
exactly what I was
or
trying to say back
criticizing
in
it.
the beginning.
Yeah,
That's way back in the beginning. That's what I was trying to say, is that these Let's Players they're taking these developers' work and they're profiting from it directly. Yeah. Like doing that, the developer should get something, right?
I think so. And I do think that it's important to kind of to work out a little bit of the details, like
oh, absolutely,
that not all the Let's Players should have to. Let's Players who are in the realm of fair use absolutely have a right to continue doing what they're doing. Let's Players who are just transforming a work, and they definitely are, because like I said, I'm not there for that game. I'm there for their creative like shit on top of it. Like that makes sense that that I should be able, or I mean, what am I saying? That makes sense that is a different thing than the original thing. And also that it's unique from films where you can just release a track. Like you can just release a commentary track for a film. No problem, because somebody else can get that film and watch it. But because games are unique, you need the playthrough to be able to, you need that playthrough. Otherwise the commentary track won't make sense.
Doesn't make any sense.
Because you can't put a commentary track to just generally to the game. I couldn't just release 30 hours of audio and say, play Deus Ex while you listen to this. It wouldn't make any sense. You need the video there. And that's, again, why this needs a little bit of special protection, because it's unique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we've come to a good consensus on this topic.
I
think we've solved this, and everyone should just listen to this and do exactly what we said, and the world will be better.
That's right. Okay, so that was our in-depth discussion on our in-depth, lightly edited discussion on Let's Plays and copyright. I think it was good that we came to a consensus. We kind of came to an agreement. Sum things up nicely. We'd really like to know what you guys think about this, because I think this is definitely something that needs much more investigation. Some data. We need information around this stuff. But I think discussion is also good. So yeah, please tweet at us with your thoughts on this at Egghead Anarchy on Twitter. Also, like our Facebook page on Facebook. What the fuck? And definitely join the discussion there. We'll have a post with this episode on our Facebook page, and so definitely leave us a comment letting us know what you think. And if you want to tweet at either Alex or myself, you can tweet at me at BSG Bryan to let me know what you think,
or me at Senior Don Gatto.
That's right. So next week we will return to the topic that we were originally going to talk about today, which is going to be Uncharted, an in-depth discussion on Uncharted, the whole series, Naughty Dog, all the characters, all that kind of good stuff. So something to look forward to for next week. Until then, hope you guys have an awesome week, and we'll see you in 7 days.
Bye.